Welcome to Does It Matter by Brainy Ballers, where we dissect the game with cutting-edge analytics to give you the upper hand. We analyze everything from hand sizes to average depth of targets to uncover hidden trends that no one else sees. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven domination. Because here at Brainy Ballers, we don't just watch the game, we understand it. So get ready, it's podcast time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today, we're diving into a really interesting football question. Does a defensive end's height actually, play a big role in their NFL success, especially thinking about fantasy football?
Right.
We've got this really eye-opening article, lots of data, going back years. Might give us some surprises.
Yeah, what's fascinating, I think, is how our gut feeling, it often bumps up against what the actual numbers say. We assume things, and this analysis kind of challenges that.
Totally. So for you listening, the big question is, does being taller really give a DE an edge? Or is that just something we think? So first off, how did the researchers even, tackle this? What was the plan for digging into height patterns?
Well, they had a pretty solid method. They looked at the top 50 fantasy football finishers among defensive ends, go back to 2003, and crucially, they used consistent height data straight from the NFL Draft Combine.
Makes sense. Consistent source.
Exactly. And when they talk about the bottom 10, just so you know, that means players ranked 41st to 50th each season in that top 50 group.
Ah, okay. So not all players, but the lower end of the top performers.
Right. It gives a good comparison group, the best versus the, let's say, good but not elite, without getting skewed by guys who barely played.
Got it. And when they first mapped this out, they had something called an averages chart. Did anything jump out right away?
Oh, definitely. There was an initial pattern that looked pretty strong, actually.
Do you want to start dominating your drafts? At BrainyBallers.com, we've researched every metric under the sun for you to find which ones are best linked to fantasy points. You can access hundreds of metrics to sharpen your scouting abilities so you know which metrics matter and which are just noise. Stop guessing on which thresholds to look for within each metric. Big numbers can be misleading or irrelevant. Our Ultimate Athlete Blueprints reveal essential scouting metrics, their importance, and benchmarks within each metric that help predict a player's probability of being a success or bust. Elevate your scouting ability with Brainy Ballers Ultimate Athlete Blueprints today. Click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
For 18 of the last 21 seasons, that's 85, 86% of the time, the average height of the guys in the absolute top 5 was the same, or even taller, than the average height of those guys in the bottom 10, the 41st to 50th group.
Huh. So on the surface, that seems like, okay, maybe height does correlate with being truly elite.
Yeah, it certainly pointed that way initially. It suggested, a potential link.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, I think. They went further, right? They made this differences chart to try and find a sweet spot for height.
Exactly. They were trying to see if there was an optimal height range.
And that analysis, it pointed towards a range of 6'3¼ inches up to 6'4 5/8 inches.
It's incredibly precise. And when they checked it, players in that specific range, they showed up in the top 10 fantasy finishers 16.8% more often than the guys in the bottom 10.
16.8% more often? That sounds pretty significant.
It does sound significant, and those indicators look strong. But they ran the standard statistical test, the Pearson correlation, looking at height versus fantasy points overall. The value came back at 0.087.
0.087. Okay. What does that mean in plain English? Is that good? Bad?
A value that low indicates no significant statistical correlation between height and fantasy production for defensive ends.
No significant correlation.
Right. Just for context, think about something like QB draft capital. How early a quarterback gets drafted. That's generally seen as mattering quite a bit for opportunity and success.
Sure.
The Pearson value for that relationship is negative 0.219. Still not massive, but way, way bigger than 0.087. So height's correlation is negligible in comparison.
Okay, hold on. This is the paradox then, right? We saw this optimal range, the 6'3" to 6'4"-ish zone that seemed to produce more top guys. But the overall math, the hard statistics say height doesn't really correlate with success. How does that work? What's going on?
That's exactly the nuance. You nailed it. What the researchers suggest is that while looking decade by decade, maybe that height range is becoming a bit more common among the top guys recently.
Ah, like an emerging trend.
Possibly. Maybe something's shifting slightly in the last couple of decades. But even with that potential trend, The overall statistical relationship across the whole period isn't strong enough.
Okay.
Height alone doesn't provide enough of a predictive boost across the board to be considered a primary factor. It might help slightly in some cases, maybe, but it doesn't enable success enough to say it truly matters statistically.
So, boiling it all down, what does this mean for you, the listener, if you're scouting, building a fantasy team, or just watching the game?
I think it means you shouldn't put too much stock in height by itself for defensive ends. Sure, you see these tall guys and looks imposing,
Right.
but the numbers just don't back it up as a key driver of fantasy points. That specific height range, 6'3" to 6'4" and change, well, interesting. The study concluded it helps, but doesn't enable success enough to say it matters.
So don't make it your main focus when evaluating a DE.
Exactly. Traditional stats confirmed height shouldn't be a top priority there. Other things seem to matter more.
So the big takeaway for you listening is, what looks obvious, what seems like a clear physical advantage, isn't always borne out by the data. It's just a great reminder that numbers can tell a really different story than our eyes or our, gut feelings, especially in sports.
Absolutely. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? If height for DEs isn't the factor we assumed, what else is out there?
Yeah.
What other obvious physical traits, maybe in other sports, or heck, even in other fields entirely? What else might turn out to be less important than we think once you actually run the numbers? What stands out to you?